Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and we're here finally to the final Spells remake video or remaster video or whatever. I'm so done at this point. I'm tired of reading spell stuff. This is also the eve of the remaster, as tomorrow the remaster essentially goes public. It releases in stores, and you can find the information hopefully on Archive and Nethys as well. I'm not sure about Path Builder. I'm sure they got something ready as well. I know Foundry has been working on a bunch of stuff. I know Foundry's already been implementing some of their stuff. So yeah, it's a big day tomorrow, and I'm definitely still gonna upload a few more videos on the remaster. I'm gonna talk about the domain spells and domain spell changes and the ancestry changes, just because I promised I would, more or less. But yeah, it's going to be a big time. And also, actually, before we get started with this video, I've seen some people mentioning I've been deleting comments or something like that. I've not been deleting any comments. If you're posting links of any kind in the comments, YouTube will just automatically delete those. So it's not my fault. I'm literally not doing anything. At this point, I don't even care if you believe me or not. But yeah. Obviously, if you're posting the same thing without a link in it, you'll find that your comment doesn't change or doesn't get deleted. So yeah, that's a thing. So just be careful, and also I implore anyone, do not just click random links in the comments. It doesn't matter what it even says in the link, because the link itself, what it displays, can be different from where it sends you. So if you're looking for any information like from the blog post or anything, just go to Paizo's official site. And speaking of Paizo, the GM core and player core were provided to me, but this is not a sponsored video, so all thoughts and opinions found herein are my own. So yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get on with the final video in the series. All right, Finger of Death was changed to execute, and now it actually can work on undead creatures. Actually, I like this change a lot. So now when it's used against an undead creature or a creature that has void healing, the spell loses the death and void traits and gains vitality trait. And it does the same amount of vitality damage with a basic fortitude save. So yeah, I actually really like this change a lot. And one of the interesting things about this is it more or less works the same way. It doesn't even need to stipulate that if the spell drops a target to 0 health, well, first it had the death trait, so obviously, but for undead, if undead go to 0 hit points, they also just die when they go to 0 hit points. So it actually doesn't even need the death trait for undead characters. So overall, I like this, and execute just makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I don't know. I think they just made the spell overall better with this change. So overall, good job. All right, now some name changes. Now, the first one is a name change with a slight change as well. Planar Shift got changed to Interplanar Teleport, and it now has a 5-foot range. Before, the spell had essentially it required everyone to be holding hands because it targeted 8 people, which is very silly, and sometimes it would create some very weird moments, game-breaking moments. Not game-breaking, but like narratively breaking moments with certain types of characters. So now it's just any character within a range of 5 feet. So everyone can circle around the individual. They don't have to be holding hands, and they all don't have to be putting their hands on the individual to get the spell off, which is pretty good in my opinion. So overall, mostly a name change, but I do like that change to the rule as well. We also have Magnificent Mansion changed to Planar Palace, which, honestly sounds cooler. Magnificent Mansion, also sounds kind of cool. And I'm actually curious why they changed this one, because maybe it was also Magnificent Mansion in D&D. I can't remember. I thought Magnificent Mansion was also different. But regardless, now it's Planar Palace, which I think is pretty cool. And also Dimensional Lock was changed to Planar Seal, which I liked Dimensional Lock personally a little bit better, but Planar Seal, I guess, is kind of cool. It mostly does the same thing, and I think the name still generally works. So, I like Dimension Log more, but not a bad name. All right, now here's a very interesting one because now we have Arctic Rift. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is meant to replace Polar Ray, potentially, because the two spells do mostly different things. The only thing they share is that they do cold damage. Arctic Rift here does 12d8 cold damage on a basic fortitude save in a 120-foot line. Where Polar Ray before had a 120-foot range, it was a spell attack roll, and it did 10d8 cold damage. So a little bit more damage here with Arctic Rift, though obviously based on a fortitude save. And also there's differences with the saves in this way. Because Polar Ray also required the enemy to make a fortitude save. Or no, actually, I think Polar Ray just did something based on whether you hit or crit. And it would make the enemy drained too, essentially. Now that's not the case. Now if the enemy fails to save, they're slowed 1 until the start of your next turn. And if they crit fail, they take double the damage, obviously. And they're slowed 1 and they're immobilized as they're covered in a layer of ice. The ice is an object with 60 hit points, a hardness of 5, and immunity to cold with a vulnerability 10 to fire. And it has standard object immunities, obviously. And if it's destroyed, the target automatically escapes. Also now when it heightens, not only does it increase by a d8, which Polar Ray kind of did before as well, but now the ice's hit points increases. So overall, I'm not sure. They're so different. Like usually I can very easily infer if a spell is a changed version just by the fact that like it does mostly the same things and it follows similar criteria. This one is a little bit harder. It probably is meant to replace Polar Ray, but I can't say for certain. So that being the case, I'm just going to call a new spell, until proven otherwise. Some more name changes here. Horrid Wilting was changed to Desiccate, which not a bad name and honestly sounds a bit more, I don't know, violent. Desiccate versus Horrid Wilting. Horrid Wilting just sounds like you're ruining someone's crops. So a good name change in my opinion. Mind Blank was changed to Hidden Mind, which I guess I'm relatively neutral on. I do like Mind Blank more, but Hidden Mind's not bad, even though it doesn't really speak much about what the spell does, other than I guess it hides a mind, which is technically true. So I don't know. I guess I'm relatively neutral on this one. It's not a terrible name, but it probably could have been better. So this is, I think, a new spell, but it also could be replacing Windwalk, which turned your party into clouds for traveling purposes. So this is Migration. It's a 2-action spell. It takes 10 minutes to cast, has a 20-foot range where you can target up to 5 willing creatures and yourself, and it has a duration of 8 hours. So essentially, you turn everyone into natural animals that kind of fit the environment that you're in, and you each gain a land, burrow, climb, fly, and swim speed of 40 feet, and can transform into a tiny or small animal most appropriate for a given movement and environment. It also gains immunity to mild, severe, and extreme cold and heat, although with any other immunities common to the local wildlife. And at the GM's discretion, in exploration mode, a target can move much faster at a travel speed of 20 miles per hour if, you're doing long distance travel, which is kind of the point of the spell. A target can't strike, cast spells, or use manipulate actions in animal form, but it can assume its normal shape by sustaining the spell. It can't sustain the spell again to resume animal form. Or no, it can, sustain the spell again to resume animal form. Now this is strange, because I don't think other people are supposed to be able to sustain your spell. So I don't know what the intent behind that is. I think it means use a concentrate action to transform, and then another one to transform back. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Windwalk before was always a weird spell. Migration, I guess, feels a lot better, and it works a lot of different ways. So I'm going to say that this one is more likely a better version of Windwalk, technically. But again, I can't accurately say. So Migration could just be a new spell. So I'll put Windwalk in the not in the spell book or not in this book section unless proven otherwise. Not a name change, but an interesting factoid. Monstrosity form now has cave worms rather than purple worms. So I guess name change here. Purple worm got changed to cave worm. I don't know how I like cave worm. The idea of purple worm was actually interesting because it just sounded unique. And cave worm, while it makes sense, I guess thematically, just sounds kind of bland in comparison. So I don't know, and heck, this might even get changed by Monster Core. Another spell I'm actually surprised is in this book rather than in the Player Core 2, especially with how many spells are not in this book, which we'll get to. But yeah, so an interesting factoid. Though, speaking on name changes here, we do have Discern Location was changed to Pinpoint, which I guess works. Pinpoint sounds a little bit strange in my opinion, but I understand the naming convention, and so I think I get it, right? But, you know, I'm just giving my opinions on names, really. It bears no relevance other than Discern Location and Pinpoint do exactly the same thing. So, you know, it's now Pinpoint. Now, here's a very interesting one. Maze has been changed to Quandry. Quandry now is and it's been reworked a little bit. So Quandry now puts the person into a extra planar puzzle room, more or less, that they need to escape from. No longer can they use survival, but instead they can use occultism, perception, or thievery checks to escape from the puzzle. And yeah, it's still really strong. Quandry is still very powerful. So overall, my general opinions are this one I think works a little bit better. Survival is one of those skills that are just not taken as frequently, while at least occultism is used for recall knowledge checks, which I think makes it more used. And as well, it has thievery checks, which, you know, can be a very big specialty for some characters. But it just kind of is the same spell with a different name and slightly different thematics around it. Otherwise, the spell operates the same. So it's still just as powerful. No nerfs to Maze here. It's just been changed to Quandry. All right, and we're done with the rank 8 spells. But before we get to rank 9, if you're enjoying this content, please like it so other people have a higher chance of seeing it. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Even after the remaster, I still have plenty of stuff to talk about when it comes to Pathfinder. And as well, when future content releases, I'll be releasing in the same insane schedule that I've been doing this time. So if you want to see new information on new books quicker, or not even quicker necessarily, but in a higher volume than any other channel on YouTube, this is the place to be. But let's go ahead and get on to the rank 9 changes. All right, so the first thing is we have a new spell or a improved version of Disjunction, because it does more or less the same thing. We now have Detonate Magic. It's 2 actions. It has a range of 120 feet, and it targets a magic item or spell effect. And the enemies need to use a reflex save when you use it, because what happens is you attempt to counteract the target, whether it's a spell or item, and if you succeed, an explosion of force deals damage to any target within the immediate vicinity of 8d6 force damage with a basic fortitude saving throw. And if the counteract was successful, the item, if it was an item, is deactivated for a week, which is pretty cool. Now, if it's a spell effect, it either targets the area of a spell effect with an explosion, or it targets an individual who has the spell on them, and it emanates in a 5-foot emanation. Oh, and also the explosion, if it's on an item, also explodes on a 5-foot emanation around everyone. So this is actually a really cool spell. And honestly, it just seems like a better version of Disjunction. So that being the case, I'm more certainly that this is just going to replace Disjunction. But as similar with some of the other spells I haven't been 100% on, I'm going to put Disjunction in the not in this book section. So yeah, but overall, I really, really like this spell. I think it's really cool, and it does some very fun things. All right, here's a popular one that I know a lot of people have been talking about, Falling Stars. This is the new version of Meteor Swarm, and it actually got changed a little bit. Before, Meteor Swarm was mostly just, I think, bludgeoning damage and fire damage, if not all fire damage. In any regard, doesn't matter, because now the falling stars do either sonic, fire, cold, or electricity damage. So it's the same as Meteor Swarm, though, as the impact area of it, which is a 10-foot burst, does 6d10 bludgeoning damage, but then it explodes in a 40-foot burst, dealing 14d6 energy damage based on the type of falling stars that you chose. So still overall a very devastating spell, but now it just does different types of damage. Falling stars, honestly, just a huge buff to Meteor Swarm. Shape change also is getting changed to a Metamorphosis, and it's being altered slightly. Now, in addition to the other effects that it had before, it also gives 40 temporary HP rather than whatever temporary HP the transformation spell would have given you before. Obviously, 40, I think, would outmatch most of the transformation spells covered by the spell. So that being the case, this is overall just a buff to what was shape change. Overall, I really like this one, and 40 temp HP is massive. So honestly, this is pretty cool. So I'm really happy with Metamorphosis. Another name change and rework spell here. We got Weird being changed to Phantasmagoria. And overall, I gotta say, love the name. Phantasmagoria is great. It has been reworked slightly, so now it does the same mental damage that Weird did before, but now it no longer frightens targets, which I think is very interesting. If the target succeeds, they now can't use reactions until the start of your next turn, which is not as good as Frightened 1 in my general opinion, but overall, not terrible. The failures where it gets really interesting, because now the target takes, not only just the full damage, but is confused until the start of your next turn, which I think is better than Frightened 2. And then on crit failure, there's no longer a chance of the enemy just straight up dying on a failed fort save. It does seem like Paizo is kind of removing the multiple save type spells, which I think just saves time at the table and honestly is overall better. And instead, the target takes double damage and is confused for 1 minute. And not only that, but Phantasmagoria does have the death trait, which means that if an enemy is reduced to 0 hit points, they just die. And I would like to say another very interesting point here. I don't think it had the incapacitate trait before, but Phantasmagoria does not have the incapacitate trait either, which is pretty cool. So, that being the case, I think overall this is a general buff because, yeah, sure, we do lose the very, very rare chance of a instant death effect from Weird. But I do think in general, the confused for a minute is actually a better effect, especially because the death was never a guaranteed thing. Anyway, they would have had to not only, let's see here, I'm actually looking at it now. They would need to make a fort save on the saving throw. If they succeed, they just take double damage and we're frightened too. And also fleeing until the end of its turn unless it critically succeeded. If it failed, so it did have to fail the next check, which, may potentially have been, like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think Phantasmagoria overall is just a buff with confused conditions. But, as I've said before, Paizo doesn't care if you use the old rules or the new rules. It all works the same. And I'm going to make it a special mention here. I'm not talking about society play, obviously. Never did I mention that before. For your home games, Paizo doesn't care. So that being the case, if you want to use Weird, use Weird. I think Phantasmagoria overall, though, is a buff. So, yeah. All right, some more name changes here. We have Bind Soul being changed to Seize Soul, which I guess makes it sound more violent, which is kind of cool. I don't know if that's necessarily what your intent might be for binding someone's soul, but who knows? So overall, I'm pretty neutral on the name change. I think it works, more or less. We do have Wail the Banshee being changed to Wail of the Damned. I'm a little sad about this one because, one, I do like banshees as, a mythic creature, more or less. I mean, I have very strong Irish heritage, so, you know, it's kind of from my homeland, but at the same time, Wheels of the Dam just sounds cool, so I can't be that mad overall. It's just a name change, it works the same, but yeah. So, yeah, well, I guess we now have Whales of the Dam, which honestly sounds pretty cool. All right, and another one, we have Vengeful Storm being changed to Wrathful Storm, and it has been reworked. The ranges have been changed. I don't know how relevant this is going to be to anyone, as I think before it was like 350-foot burst rather than 400 feet. And I think the range increments before on the other one was 200 or like 2,200 feet rather than 2,000 feet. So I think they just made the numbers more square, which I think is generally fine. The effects are also just different now, but it still does the -4 circumstance penalty to physical attacks during the storm and difficult terrain for flying creatures, yada yada. Now we have effects that we can choose. We have Blizzard that deals 4d8 cold damage to each creature in or below the storm with no save. So 0 save. Automatic damage, pretty cool. Everything in or beneath the cloud is concealed by driving snow, and any ground is difficult terrain. We have Hail, which we kind of had something similar before. Does 4d10 bludgeoning damage with a basic fortitude saving throw to each creature in the area. We have a Lightning, which choose up to 10 creatures in or below the storm to be struck by lightning. Each of these creatures takes 7d6 on a basic reflex saving throw. And Tornado, a roughly cylindrical whirlwind with a 30-foot radius. Each creature within the whirlwind is thrown 40 feet upward, which is devastating because if they can't stop it, that's just guaranteed 40 damage on fall. And yeah, it heightens the same. So it's very interesting with some of the changes here. Because before, Storm of Vengeance had like Acid Rain, which is the same thing as Blizzard, only it was acid damage, but it didn't do any of the other effects of Blizzard, so overall a buff. And we no longer have Rain and Wind because it's been more or less mixed into Blizzard. Otherwise, everything else is the same. So overall, I'm going to say this is a big buff for Wrathful Storm, as Blizzard especially. That effect, which is just automatic damage plus some pretty decent debuffs, is something that I think is just an overall buff and probably one of the better conditions in my opinion. So yeah, overall a pretty cool upgrade, and honestly, Wrathful Storm rather than Storm of Vengeance sounds cooler. So good job, Paizo. One more name change before we get to the final spell that I'm sure a lot of you are kind of eagerly anticipating here. We have Time Stop being changed to Freeze Time. Honestly, pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to say I'm pretty neutral on the name change, and I understand why it was changed. So yeah, other than that, let's talk about the big one, right? What has happened to Wish or whatever version for each of the spells? Well, now it's been changed. So first of all, there is the Wish Ritual. Oh, I didn't move my camera again. Oh my goodness. Honestly, I don't even know why I bother moving my camera at this point. I'm so late in the video. But we have the Wish Ritual that you can find over here that does the thing where it goes outside of the spell's normal parameters, right? Where it does the extra things. This is what is now going to be referred to whenever something says it cannot be, change unless done by a Wish Ritual, which is this ritual here. But now we have Manifestation. Manifestation has replaced Wish, Miracle, Primal Phenomenon, and Alter Reality as the generic spell version, kind of combining them all, which I'm actually all for. It just makes it save space in the book, and whether you like your extra flavor or not, like, I completely understand that for sure, but I would rather have more spells in the books, or more material in the books, rather than wasting ink on repainting the same spell over and over again. So we have Manifestation here, and now it just does the generic spell effect, where you either duplicate a 9th rank or lower spell of the same tradition you're casting Manifestation with, or a spell of 7th rank or lower from any other tradition. So overall, I do think that this is like a buff. This one doesn't make casters inherently like the most powerful when they hit level, like 19 or something like that, whenever you get 20th level spells. So, you still can like use any spells you have, yada yada, but you just don't get this thing that like, oh, I wish this was different. Boom, bam. Now you need to find the ritual, which your GM just needs to give you access to. And I think overall this is good. I think it's a good change in general. You might disagree with me. And again, as I mentioned before, Paizo doesn't care if in your home games you use the old material. It doesn't break any of the design conventions that they're going forward. So yeah, that's going to be it. Now, I do have a massive list of spells here that were not in this book that we're either going to see in another book or may possibly have even been reworked here, as I mentioned before, with like Polar Ray or Disjunction. But spells that are not in this book that I'm sure we're going to see a little bit later is going to be Divine Vessel, Ethereal Jaunt, which is actually a big surprising one for me, Polar Ray, Power Word, Blind, Prismatic Spray, Reverse Gravity, Spell Turning, Visions of Danger, Anti-Magic Field, Divine Aura, Dream Council, Power Word Stun, Prismatic Wall, Scintillating Pattern, Spirit Song, Spiritual Epidemic, Windwalk, Crusade, Disjunction, Nature's Enmity, Power Word Kill, Prismatic Sphere, Resplendent Mansion, Telepathic Demand, Weapon of Judgment, and Primal Herd. So a lot of these spells, you can tell, a lot of them have like very big divine ties to them. So I'm sure we might see these either in Player Core 2 or maybe even in the whatever book like the War of the Immortals book that comes out. So that's a possibility. I also noticed all power words have been removed essentially from the core book, and as well all versions of chromatic type spells have been removed. And I don't know if they're just trying to rework these because of their ties to D&D, obviously. Same with the power words. So yeah, I can't honestly say that they're planning on taking these out of the game. All I'm saying is that these were in the core book originally and are not in Player Core 1. So as far as I know currently, they're not going to be in printed material unless they come out in Player Core 2 or something else. What that means, who knows? Honestly, I mean, this is the end of the video, right? Feel free to click off. I want to give my final thoughts, though, on the remaster, especially with all the trials and tribulations I've been going through for the spells section here, as it was pretty much like, it was a big ask, honestly, to go through all this. The remaster is something that I feel was necessary and was really ambitious, but it's just messy. It's just messy. It's causing a lot of issues. It's causing a lot of concern, and people who were interested in Pathfinder decided not to get into Pathfinder until the remaster comes out, but now we're only got about half the classes of the APG and the core book out currently. And there's just like there's this whole thing with like spells of different names and yada yada yada. I understand why they went through with it. I think that in some ways they felt like they had to. And I do think there's some good things that have come out of the remaster overall. But it's just going to be messy. And I don't think we're going to get things really well settled until after Player Core 2 comes out. Because then Paizo can dedicate time to doing erratas of the other books and making everything kind of set up. And so I think next year, like after Player Core 2 releases, we're going to see Pathfinder 2E essentially settle with much more definitive rulings and Paizo's intent behind everything. But, obviously, I'm just here to provide the material for people who had not gotten to see it yet and to kind of share in the enjoyment with you all about the remaster. As I said before, there's going to be more remaster content coming out for the remainder of this week anyway. And as well, we're going to have our table talk on Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we're going to do, I think, probably the final remaster chats where we just talk about all things now that everyone has it and just kind of discuss, speculate, do all that kind of fun stuff that community is due. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with the remaster. Leave all the controversies to me. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.